In the West, when we look at this object and we're thinking, well, how does that thing work? Let's think of it not so much in terms of a brain giving out thoughts, but more like a radio playing music. And a Westerner looks at a radio playing music, the first impulse will be, well, there must be something inside this box that is playing the music. So let's open the box with the expectation that we're going to find Led Zeppelin, because they must have a little Led Zeppelin in there making the music that the box is playing. So, but then we don't find Led Zeppelin. What we found are things like this, circuits. And if we get a better analysis, we find refined versions of these circuits, and we come to the conclusion that the circuit is generating the music. In fact, we even can prove it to ourselves, because if we start mucking about in the circuit and taking little pieces out, well, the music starts to become degraded. And so we can very logically and rationally come to the conclusion that the circuit is literally producing the music. And an Easterner will say, no, you've completely misconstrued the whole point of the radio, which is that it's receiving something. There's nothing in the box that is actually generating it. It's completely a receiving instrument. So this gives rise to two different ways of thinking about the correlations that we see in the neurosciences. The brain generates the mind, or the brain receives or filters something like large mind out there. Both of them would give rise to the same kinds of phenomena that we see in the science lab. Now we can look at the same thing. So here's your worldview, or your course of your life, and here's somebody else's. And so now, rather than saying we're locked on that one line, imagine that you're actually spread out somewhat. So you're reaching out. While you're moving along space and time, you're also reaching out to the ends of the universe. And so if the other person is also doing the same thing, then when that occurs, this is no longer your body and the other person's body interacting directly, but there's a non-local connection. Well, that's what we call telepathy. So does telepathy exist? If this was a court of opinion, and of course the science court is much more rigorous than a legal court, but if it was something like a legal court, then what would we conclude? Well, we find evidence of telepathy in the dream state, the conscious report state, also in the autonomic nervous system and the EEG, the central nervous system, in functional MRI, everywhere where scientists have tried to look for correlations between people who are isolated, we find them, and the evidence continues to compound. So this is one way of showing that as the methods of looking for these kinds of phenomena improve and become more sophisticated, we still see the result.